Hey everyone, it is Dr. Trevor. Welcome to Mindset Monday. It is great to be with you today. So I'm super excited about today's topic. So today's topic is actually was a coined phrase by a psychologist named Carol Dweck, which is growth mindset. Have you ever heard that before? Growth mindset? In fact, it's been kind of a buzzword these last few years, and that's why I'm excited to talk about it today. Like we use this language, particularly in like academic circles, a lot of executive coaching, leadership training. We talk about this idea of growth mindset. And so, I thought on a Mindset Monday, what a great thing to talk about, right? A great way to kick off our week together. So first of all, I think it's important that we think about what is growth mindset. So before we do that, I just want to ask you a question. Maybe a scaling question. Think about this. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe that you can improve at anything with enough effort? On a scale of 1 to 10. Like what, before we even jump into today's conversation, I'm curious, before we even start, how much do you believe that you can improve at anything with enough effort? Like 1 would be like not at all. 10 would be like absolutely everything all the time, right? And most of us were probably somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe 2, 3, 4, that kind of number of like, well, I don't know. I think I just know what I know, and that's what I know, right? And I'm higher numbers of like 7, 8, 9 is like, well, if I just kind of put my head down and keep at it and keep going, then maybe there's progress and there's growth and there's change. So mindset, right? This growth mindset. So what is it? It's this belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through these things: effort, learning, and perseverance. Right? The idea that abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. Now, for some of you, when you hear this, you may be thinking about the idea of like our IQ, like our intellectual quotient. That's what IQ stands for, intellectual quotient. And maybe you've been told that, hey, at a certain point, right, I'm just as smart as I'll ever be, or I'll only get to a point where I'll only have like capacity, like a hard drive in a computer. Like when it's full, and that's all I got. So if ever things ever going to change, then something I got to like delete stuff in order to be able to load up stuff, right? But today, when we talk about growth mindset, we're going to use a different framework for this, a more expansive kind of way. So growth mindset, again, this idea of, or this belief that abilities and intellect can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. So this is in stark contrast to what we might call a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset believes that abilities are set in stone and can't be changed. Right? Like either I'm good at something or I'm not good at something. Or it comes easily or it's really difficult. Or I can do it or I can't do it. Right? Or I've reached a certain level and that's all the more that I can do, or that's the highest I can get to. Right? Fixed mindset believes abilities are set in stone and can't be changed. So let me walk you through a couple of situations we can kind of compare and contrast what the difference is between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So let's take the situation where you're trying to learn a new skill, right? A fixed mindset would be something like, I'm just not talented at this. Right? Like, right, you try something and maybe you don't get it the first time. So the fixed mindset would be able to say, hey, I'm just not talented at this. The growth mindset might be something like, hey, I just need more practice. Okay, how about the situation of like facing failure? Right, like when you've tried something and it didn't go as planned, or maybe it ultimately kind of felt like you failed. So fixed mindset would say something like, I'm not good enough. Right, like I'm just not any good at this. Right, why? Because the situation is I failed. Growth mindset would be totally different. It would be something like, hey, what can I learn from this? Right, fixed is I'm not good at this. Growth is what can I learn from this? How about this situation? The situation of receiving feedback from other people in our lives. Fixed mindset might be something like, this means I'm bad at this. Right? Like if I'm told that there's room for improvement, or hey, that wasn't great, right? The feedback. A fixed mindset might be something like, this means I'm bad at it. Growth mindset would be something like, this helps me improve, right? This feedback that I'm getting, fix this, work on this, try this, do better at this, consider this, right? A different mindset, the mindset of like, oh, that's actually helpful to get this feedback because now this means that I can improve. Okay, how about one more situation? The situation of seeing others succeed. Okay, situation of seeing others succeed. A fixed mindset might be something like they're just naturally gifted. Right, so the reason they're able to succeed is because it just comes naturally to them. Okay? The growth mindset is to be able to say something like, I wonder what strategies they're using to get those results. That's interesting, isn't it? So fixed, again, is just saying, well, they just must naturally be good at it. But growth is actually curious. Like, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what's working for them that they're achieving or arriving at success. Okay, so a couple keys in this as we just talk about this idea of what is growth mindset. I think it's helpful for us to be able to maybe think about it from the neurological, physiological space to be able to recognize like, hey, our brain is a muscle, right? Our brain is a muscle. The more we work it out, the more time and attention we give it, the more that we take healthy strategies and practices, like the stronger it can become. Does that make sense? Right? Our brain is a muscle, right? Just like other muscles in our body. Like think about that. If you're gonna, try to strengthen a certain part of your body, right? Become more flexible, more agile, be able to lift a certain weight a certain number of times, right? The more we do the disciplines, the exercises, the dedication of around that muscle, right, the stronger it becomes. It's the exact same way with our brain. Okay, so I actually looked this up and found this. There's studies that show that when people adopt a growth mindset, this is what they found. They perform better, they're able to take on more challenges, and they recover from setbacks faster. That's fascinating. I mean, aren't those things that, I know they're things that I want in my life, aren't those things that you might want to consider for you, right? This ability to be able to say, hey, if I have a growth mindset, I'm going to tend to perform better, be able to take on more challenges, and be able to recover from setbacks faster. Okay, that might just be like, sounds too good to be true. So I think it's helpful if we talk about, so how does this actually work? Like, how does a growth mindset happen? So I mentioned kind of the physiological and neurological parts. Let's just start there with kind of the science of it. So in our brains, we have what's called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to physically change and create new connections when you practice new skills and challenge yourself. So one of the most common ways this happens is this idea of like muscle memory. Like to some degree, we all have this kind of like, we've done something, we've done it again and again and again and again and again and again until the point we can almost do it without paying attention to it, right? This brain physically changes and creates new connections when you practice new skills and challenge yourself. Okay, so I was like, just the other day, I was home, I was hanging out with my family, I was watching my son, he's texting, and he's literally like watching one screen, like the TV, while he's texting on another screen, his phone, right? There's like just such muscle memory, like he knows exactly where the letters are, the keys are, right? And he's texting without even having to like look down or notice what he's doing. Right? Or for some of us, that happens when we sit at a laptop or in front of a computer, right? For some of us, like for myself, I'm a musician. So when I sit down at a piano, right? When I pick up a guitar, right? Like I've gotten to the place where I could literally close my eyes. I could play in the dark, right? Like I could have a conversation with somebody while I'm sitting and playing that instrument. Why? Because I've practiced it and practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. And what happens is, just like we're texting, we're typing, we're playing an instrument, we're playing a sport, we're doing any other skill or any other activity. Again, these neuro pathways are formed, right? And we're not just that they're just these connections are happening, but when we do things over and over and over and over again, we're forming and kind of creating connections in our brain. And neuroplasticity is the flexibility that allows us to keep doing that. Right? The other side of neuroplasticity is there's a rigidity when in the absence of this continued work, right, of flexing this muscle, it tends to start to stiffen up, right? Much like, right, if we were never to stretch before or after a workout, or as we age, right? Well, the more we stretch, the more flexible we become or stay, right? When we tend not to stretch, right, we tend to tighten up. Again, so that's this idea of this neuroplasticity, this neurological experience that happens with growth mindset. And the simple idea of this in the science is that there's effort over talent. And it's saying that intelligence isn't fixed. It grows when we push past our limits. Let's take like an example of an athlete. Like I've been a runner for years, and I spend time with other runners, right? And there's this idea, right, of we can keep pushing, right? We can keep going, whether that is a little bit farther, whether that is a little bit faster. And for many of us, I've experienced this myself as a runner, that it's actually my mindset that limits my ability more frequently than it actually is my physical body, right? Like if I set out and be able to say, hey, I'm only capable of this distance, it's actually the limitation that I'm setting on myself, right, mentally, rather than what my body is capable of. Okay, so let's think about some real life examples here. I'm just going to give a couple that might be familiar. So like think about like Michael Jordan. There's this, if you ever heard the biography of Michael Jordan, he actually got cut from his high school basketball team. Right, he's known by many people, and I know it's debatable, but that he's like the GOAT of basketball, right? The greatest of all time. And here's Michael Jordan. He's a high school kid, like he's lanky and he's skinny, right? Struggling to even make the team. He doesn't make the team. He gets cut from the team. And yet, he's determined, right? He's persistent. We talked about effort. We talked about persistence, right? And he stays at it and stays at it and stays at it, right? And we can, if you go back and you've heard his story, right? Or if you know about him historically, right? I mean, if not the best, one of the best basketball players of all time. Okay, let's go back further in history. Let's go back to Thomas Edison. Do you know that it took Thomas Edison, just something like 10,000 failed attempts before he had the successful invention of the light bulb? So if Thomas Edison, if he would have like tried it and it didn't work, and tried it and it didn't work, and tried it and it worked, and he said, well, I gave it 3 tries, right? Like, I tried. I guess I'm not good at this. Well, I guess I'm a failure. Well, I guess I should probably just give up now, right? Like the fixed mindset. No, he had dedication. He had determination. And he was able to learn from those mistakes. And he was able to take what he was learning. He was open to feedback. He was looking at the data. He was little by little, right? He was able to work towards the ultimate goal. So there's actually this statement from him that I've heard before, and it's this. Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That's funny, huh? Right? I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that doesn't work. Another way that I've heard like this quote, or kind of in the same kind of direction, I don't know if it was paraphrased or how he actually said this, but it's something to the effect of, I didn't create the light bulb in 1 step. The light bulb was created in 10,000 steps. right? I mean, this is like the consummate example of growth mindset, right? It's the effort, it's the intention, it's the dedication, it's the perseverance to keep going, right? So another example in history is J.R. Tolkien, right? We know from Harry Potter. So before Harry Potter ever became a thing, before it ever became popular, it was actually rejected multiple times. And so if J.R. Rawlings would have just determined that, well, you know what, this isn't really a good work, I probably should just give up now, like maybe it just wasn't a good idea, maybe I should just go in a different direction. So J.R. Rawlings, right, rejected multiple times before Harry Potter became like what we know now is like this global success. Okay, so here's the key insight in this. Failures are not dead ends. They're stepping stones. Right? Failures are not dead ends, but merely stepping stones. And the whole crux of growth mindset is to be able to say, hey, when I fail, it's not actually failure. Right? The lack of success or the lack of desired or preferred outcomes and results is actually not even failure. It's recognized as it's just part of the process. It's part of the journey. It's to be able to say, like, hey, when something doesn't work, I learn from it, right? I pay attention, I notice, and I keep trying. I keep trying again and again and again. Okay, so that leads us, I want to talk about, so if we kind of understand what is growth mindset, we were able to walk through, so like, how does it actually work? I want to spend a few moments to be able to say, so how do we get it, right? Or how do we strengthen it, right? This idea of strengthening a growth mindset. So the first is actually what I just referenced. It's this idea of reframing failure as learning. Okay, so I referenced this earlier. So like an actionable step is like, instead of saying I failed, try to say something like, what can I learn from this? Right, like if you flub a presentation at work, instead of thinking I'm terrible at public speaking, right, which might be that first thought that pops into your mind, we want to replace that with what went wrong and how can I improve for next time? Right, so rather than saying like, oh, it's a failure, I'm terrible at it, it's just be able to say, hey, what did this opportunity provide for me by the way of learning? Right, what can I do differently next time? Okay, the second part is embrace challenges instead of avoid them. Embrace challenges rather than avoid them. If we have a fixed mindset, right, we avoid challenges. Things like, I'm not any good at that, I could never do that, that won't work, right? I can't do it. So rather than embracing those thoughts, actually lean into a challenge, right? Embracing challenges rather than avoiding them. So seek out difficult tasks and stretch your skills. I think we have to be able to embrace that with this idea of it's a journey and it's a process. It's not a destination. It's not a fixed outcome. Okay, so instead of saying, I can't do math, say something like, I just haven't learned this yet. Rather than I can't do it, replace it with, well, I'm working on it. Or I just can't do this yet. And that's actually leading us to the third point here, is replace the word yet with not yet. So whenever you think you can't do something, add the term yet to the sentence. So back when I used that example, like I can't do math, I haven't learned this, and we add the word yet. Or here's another example. I was talking about running earlier. I can't run a mile, period, right? That would be the fixed mindset. But the growth mindset might be something like, I can't run a mile, put the word in there, yet, but I can train for it. Right? And what this does is it expands, right, our our mindset, to be able to say, hey, just because I haven't done it yet, right, that word yet, doesn't mean I won't be able to do it, can't do it, will do it, right, in the future. Growth mindset embraces this idea, right, that we're going to reframe failure as learning. We're going to embrace challenges rather than avoid them, and we're going to replace yet with not yet. Okay, so the next thing as we kind of walk through this, I think it's super important that we consider surrounding ourselves with other people who think the way that we want to think. What I mean by that is we want to surround ourselves in a growth mindset environment. Like, we want to be around people, and we want to be in places, and we want to be on work teams, and we want to be a part of communities that have a growth mindset, right? Because as much as we do this work on our own, man, how important it is for us to embrace this idea with other people, right? So think about it this way. Spend time with people who challenge you, right? People who encourage you. So if you want to improve in something, like, join a community club or a mentoring group instead of trying to just go it alone. It's really meaningful, and it really matters when we can do that, right? When we can put ourselves in relationships with other people, we can surround ourselves in environments where the mindset is growth, right? With enough effort, right? With enough perseverance, right? We can work towards accomplishing more. And then last, I want to talk about this, which is simply growth mindset incorporates the strength of celebrating small wins. It's so important here. Growth mindset says, hey, let's celebrate progress, right? Like Dr. Mike and I have in many times talked in our 14-day challenges, here on our live streams, about the purposeful mindset of being able to say, hey, we're working towards progress, right? We're not trying to attain perfection, right? Why? Because it's not attainable, right? Because we're not perfect. We've never been perfect. We'll never be perfect. But what we can do is we can work towards progress. And that's exactly what a growth mindset says, right? We're going to work towards progress. And we're going to celebrate not just the big things and not the ultimate destination, but we're going to celebrate the little things every step along the way. So here's one of the ways that you can do that, like something actionable. You can jot down, keep a journal, keep track of the little things you are doing. Sometimes you might, think about even with my watch every day, it tracks how many, when I stand, it tracks how many steps I took. It tracks whether I met my goal for exercise or for movement for the day, right? When those rings fill up, right? That's worth celebrating, because that is progress on the very minute every day, right? When I can see those rings fill up. So instead of waiting to celebrate until you've reached some kind of major milestone or some big goal, right? Celebrate each little milestone along the way. All right, so just in closing, a few kind of final thoughts for us. Here's a quote that I found, and it says, "The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, it's the mindset to keep going." All right, the difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, it's the mindset to keep going. I love that quote. In fact, jokingly, I'm with groups of people all the time. I get asked to speak or teach or do workshops or trainings, introducing myself as Dr. Trevor. And sometimes I'll get the statement of oh, you must be super smart. And the reality is I don't even know that I am that smart. But what I am able to say is, no, I actually was just persistent. right? The persistence of like going to college and then, into grad school with master's degrees, and then the persistence of going on to doctoral degrees, right? It's not because I'm brilliant. I can guarantee you that, right? It's just because of persistence. Even as I share that, I think it's important for us in our lives, right, to just hold on to that idea, right? Like effort and persistence, right? Working towards our goals, making progress. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent. It's the mindset to keep going. Like, think about it this way. Like, maybe you've heard the phrase, it's not how we start, but rather it's how we finish. Right, this idea that we keep pushing and we're dedicated and we're purposeful and we have perseverance and we have endurance, right, to keep us moving forward. All right, I want to give you a challenge as we wrap up for today. Okay, so if you can do this now or just make note of this now, maybe you can come back to it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down one area where you'll apply a growth mindset this week. Okay, you're going to identify one area, whether that's in your personal life, in your professional life, whether that's as an individual, whether that's as you're interacting with others, right? You're going to identify one area in your life, or maybe you have had a fixed mindset. You've just determined and decided, I can't do this, I'm not good at it, I've tried it before, and I failed, or I could never do that, or that's just not anything I could ever work towards or accomplish, right? You've somewhere in your mind, or you've come to that conclusion. So the challenge is just identify one of them. Identify one area of your life where you can make that switch, right? Where you can make the switch to a growth mindset this week. Then here's a couple prompts for you. Something like, this week I will embrace discomfort by fill in the blank. So think of the example of like, I could never run a 5K. That's just not me, right? Be able to say, oh, yes, I can, right? With effort, right, and with encouragement and with persistence. Now, it might not be running, it could be walking, or if it's not walking, it could be whatever mode I'm able to do, right? Some of us, there are limitations. I recognize that. But for those of us who are capable and able, right, we have the capacity. That might be an example, right? So this week, I am willing to embrace this discomfort by going for a walk, walking 1 block or 2 blocks or 6 blocks, right? Or jogging a half a mile or a mile. I'm going to embrace the discomfort of it this week. Here's another example, another prompt. So instead of avoiding challenges, I will fill in the blank. All right, this idea of rather than avoiding challenges, we're actually going to embrace challenges, right? This thing that I'm avoiding, or I just determined I can't do, or I'm not capable of, or I can't get any better at, I'm deciding like, you know what, I'm actually going to embrace the challenge, recognizing it probably won't go great the first time, the second time, or maybe even the 10th time, but I'm going to embrace the challenge. Okay, here's the third prompt for us. I will replace negative self-talk with fill in the blank. I'm going to replace the negative self-talk, negative self-talk that says, again, I'm not any good at it, I can't do it, I'm a failure, I've tried it before, it didn't work, it'll never work, right, with something, well, actually more true, more healthy, more positive, right, to be able to say, hey, I have failed in the past, but failure is actually opportunity. It's opportunity for learning, right? It's opportunity for growth. It's to be able to say, I'll replace that negative self-talk with, hey, I'm not going to be great at it the first time, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't try it. The negative self-talk of, you can't do it. And you're going to replace that with, well, I can't do it. We talked about it earlier. You're going to fill in and add the word yet, right? I'm just not going to be able to accept the I can't do it period. I'm going to be able to say I can't do it. I'm going to add the word yet. Okay. So as we close today, here's a quote from Henry Ford. Here's another historical figure, right, that we had done incredible things, and we see this every day of our lives. Henry Ford, right, like Ford Motor Company, right, the guy who took the car, the vehicle, right, which was for the elite and was like made, small, right, manufactured to make it available to anyone and everyone. He says this: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Did you catch that? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So way before this trendy term called growth mindset ever existed, here's Henry Ford affirming the very principle. And he's saying this: if you think you can, you're right. Right? If you have a growth mindset, and if you think you can, you're right. Right? Because you can, with effort and with intention and with perseverance, man, that's right. You can do it. But he also notes this: and if you think you can't, you're also right. Right? Because he's saying if you think you can't, then guess what? You probably won't, because you've already limited and you've fixed your mindset that will lead to those outcomes of unable to do whatever it is you've determined you can't do. Okay, so again, that challenge for this week ahead, right? Write down one area where you'll apply a growth mindset this week and just walk through those things we talked about today. I'm going to embrace discomfort instead of avoiding challenges. I'm going to lean into them. I'm going to replace that negative self-talk with something more positive and something more true. I'm going to rather than accepting the statement of I can't, I'm going to add the word yet, because I'm not working towards perfection. I'm just working towards progress. Okay, it's great to be with you guys. Thanks for being with me today. So, as you know, every week we're here Monday for Mindset Monday. Every Wednesday we're back live. Dr. Mike does an episode every Wednesday called Wellness Wednesday. And then I'm back every Friday for Faithful Friday. Hope you guys have an incredible